47 years coaching college football. There's our guy, Phil Bennett, on with us a little bit earlier than normal.
Which is amazing because he's only 49 years old.
Yeah. Hey, was Bobby Taylor, well, we know how good he was. Did you ever try and get him?
He came out what year, Smokey? What year did he come out Longview?
I want to say in the early 90s, like 92, 93, something like that. Yeah.
I was at LSU, and I talked to Bobby, and, he committed very early to Notre Dame, and obviously has done well, very well spoken, and he was a heck of a player.
Phenomenal athlete, no question. You have 4 blue bloods, Phil. Notre Dame and Penn State, almost like mirror images in some ways, even the way they dress and all that. And then, of course, what Ohio State's been able to do in UT with the huge win against Arizona State. These seem to be the teams that have been the most consistent in this tournament. A couple of them have gotten fortunate, but your thoughts about where we are?
Well, listening to Bobby, I would agree with a lot of what he said, but, Notre Dame has had a long drought and really haven't ever played to the level in big games that they did last week. And so that was huge that they could go in and play, in New Orleans in front of an SEC crowd and play at that level. I think that it was impressive. I think, one of the things I was not surprised about was the Oregon-Ohio State game. I think we talked about it last week. I think Oregon has been suspect on defense all year. I thought they were suspect last year. Penn State had I think I'm right on this. Penn State had over 600 yards offense and just turned the ball over too much in the Big Ten championship game, or they would have beaten Oregon. Obviously you've got to think about Ohio State. It wasn't but a month ago they were wanting to fire everybody on the staff, and Michigan went in and truly dominated them in their own stadium. Texas got by on a prayer, probably a no call, got them to this game. But I think all things balance out. I think that they're probably the best 4 teams left.
Yeah, I wanted your thoughts on Cam Skattebo in that game for sure, Coach. And what, with a player like him, you can only stop him for so long. The more they give him the ball, the more he's going to punish you. And so from a defensive coordinator standpoint, what is it like when you're like, can we just not see him for a minute? Just a minute, can you not give him the ball?
Paul, the first thing I noticed in the game, Texas was sort of plugging their linebackers, which I thought was a great idea. It didn't give him time. He had to make a very quick cut, and it made him go lateral very quick. Well, I don't know if you noticed that. They quit doing that. And when they started letting him, and he started, first of all, when he started getting a little bit hot, he was bouncing everything. He was going inside, and the ball bounced, and they were losing the leverage. Then he got going, and it really didn't matter. His balance and his vision was just too good for him. And he was so in tune of where he was going, where the cut was. And they say he's not fast, but he looked – I don't know what y'all thought, but I thought he looked fast to me.
Yeah, he did to me.
He looked plenty fast to me, absolutely, yeah. I mean, what did you think of that targeting, I guess, debacle, if you will, Coach? Obviously, if you're a Texas fan, you feel like, hey, it's the game of football, let them play. If you're an Arizona State fan, you feel screwed royally. What do you think?
Craig, I'm like Kenny said. I guess I don't know what targeting is.
Right.
I mean, I say that sincerely. I think it's right now, 2 things happen in these games, and it just burns my ass up, is that we get officials that try to control the game, or we get officials who won't make a call. I thought that one of the reasons I didn't feel like it was not called is because on Arizona State's interception, that could have been targeting also. It was almost identical hit. Face to face. There wasn't any real launching. It was sort of a bam bam. I don't think that Taft, projectiled into him. So I think that's probably why it wasn't called. Could it have been called? Absolutely, it could have been.
Oh, yeah.
What from the calls that I have seen. Now it's just it was a fortunate thing for Texas. Now I will also say this: I thought, the longer Arizona State stayed in the game, the stronger they got. Texas has fast guys. They couldn't come close to tackling that quarterback. And I found out later, a friend of mine's a defensive coordinator at Arizona State. They said he's 4.4 or low 4.5s. And I thought that they played their way back in to win the game, and it was a tough loss.
Yeah, it was brutal, but I think with as young of a coach as Dillingham is, that's an exciting program moving forward that I think will be a lot of fun to follow. Now, on the flip side, Texas does get the win. How do you feel about them going up against the quote-unquote hottest team in the country in Ohio State, and it's in Arlington and all this and that, but just based on how you've seen them play in the first win and now this next round against Arizona State, beating Clemson in that first win, what stands out about the Longhorns, good, bad, or ugly?
Craig, the first thing I'm not going to do, I'm not going to underestimate them. You look at their season after taking a pretty good beating by Georgia. Everybody said, oh, they're not physical. They're not this. I went to the A&M game, and they are physical, and they are well coached, and they do have players. I think, truthfully, that they're a team that sort of plays to the level they need to play. And I say that as a compliment. I watched them throughout the year. I remember one of the games sitting out here on my patio. I watched them against Kentucky, and they let Kentucky sort of stay in the game with them. And I'm telling these A&M people, I said, I think we can play with them. I think we can play. We couldn't. It was close. But it was obvious. They dominated the front. Their receivers were faster. Their quarterback was better. Their running game was going that night. I go back to when I was the head coach at SMU, and they played USC. At the time, and Smokey, you remember this, USC was almost unapproachable. They were so good.
Yep.
I'd played them. We had beat them out there when I was at K-State. One of the years they were like 11-1 or 11-2. We had beat them, but they had ended up, and they had, of course, the great running tandem, Matt Leinart, and they were good on defense. And Texas goes out there, and everybody thought that they were going to get dominated in the Rose Bowl, and they find a way to win. I just think they're a team that plays to the level they need to play. Now, I am impressed, like everyone else, with Ohio State. I did watch their Michigan game that proved that they could have an off game. I watched them also against Penn State in a very tight game. I think they're going to go. They're good on defense. Their quarterback has to be on. He was not on versus Michigan, and I've watched him when he was at K-State. He has never beaten Texas. And you sit there and say, well, that shouldn't mean anything. Well, sometimes you get something in your head, that's like playing golf, Smokey. When you had never beat somebody,
oh yeah.
When you've got to par that last hole to win, something gets a little bit tighter than other players, right?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about there. Hey, you mentioned that USC Texas game, which the Vince Young game is what a lot. Reggie Bush, Lendell White, and Matt.
Right.
That was perhaps the greatest single game performance of all time, and plus what he did to bring them back to get within the chance to get the fourth. Where would you put Vince Young among all the players that you ever, while you were coaching, coached against or scouted, and who else would be if there was like three names? Because you never faced Tommy Frazier, did you?
No. The one that won the Heisman, we beat at
Crouch?
Crouch. Travis.
Yeah.
We beat Crouch. Someone was talking about Riley Leonard. I personally, I don't see Riley being a number 1 draft pick, that type of guy. But he is a outstanding All-American quarterback, a la Charlie Ward, one of those special guys that might not be a first-round draft pick. I think Vince Young was all those things, but he was a draft pick. And I think he will tell you. He ended up being Rookie of the Year, I think, and got it going. He's a play waiting to happen. And then he got some I have a friend that was on the Titans at that time. He got some bad advice. And we all know sometimes when you get bad advice, you end up getting injured and then had a bad run there. But he's as talented that's ever been through Texas or maybe college football.
Yeah, his natural instinct, ability, looked like he was hardly running, but he was always running away from somebody.
I know what you're talking about. The play that he scored, they had a great pressure on, and it looked like he just floated to the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
And the game was over. And he was Greg Davis, the offensive coordinator there with Mac, was a dear friend of mine. We started coaching at A&M together. And Greg said he had an it factor of being such a competitor that that the will to win was uncanny.
How do you feel about I guess it's an online conversation going on, but it's all over the college football shows, I guess, as well, about the long layoff and how that might affect. I feel like that's entirely a reaction to Georgia not being in any longer and kind of coming up with a reason as to why it's not the teams that people expected rather than something else.
Let's be honest, Greg. Everybody's pissed off because the SEC,
Right.
doesn't have a blue blood in it, as you said. Wouldn't you agree with that, Smokey?
Yeah, Texas.
You don't have Florida, you don't have Alabama, you don't have Tennessee,
Georgia.
I remember. I think I told you one time. Spurrier told me a story about. He said, "Yeah." I said, "How you think A&M?" We're at the Waldorf Astoria. I said, "How you think A&M will do in the SEC?" He goes, I'm glad they're in our league. He says they'll never be a blue blood. He said, but they'll be right there with Ole Miss and Arkansas, and Mississippi State. That's how he said it.
He was right.
And they mean it. And I think that's the way it is. You've got Alabama, you got Georgia, you got Tennessee, you got LSU, you got Florida. Those are the people that are going to rule.
And then, of course, you add Oklahoma, even though they weren't very good, what Texas is doing right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's mostly just an excuse for them not being there. But can you speak to just long layoffs and like the difficulty of that, or is it easier to navigate than maybe people think that it is? Just the idea of having these 5 weeks off and then having to play and all that jazz.
I think that's a little bit too long. I do. You've got and nowadays school's different. Hell, these kids hardly go to class. Everything's online. So keeping them corralled is probably harder now than it was back then. Plus, think about this, Greg. They got money in their pocket now.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I was doing it, we had those long, you finish your season at the end of November. You don't play till January the 1st. Hell, nobody had money. You were trying to get Christmas money. Now they got more than the coaches.
I remember when I got paid to do a radio show on campus, I wanted enough money to play Pac-Man and go eat pizza and drink maybe a beer. That was it. That's about Phil, on the layoff, if you were a coach, and now you have teams that have 4 teams who have a longer layoff. It used to be that way, 5 games, 5 weeks or so when you won a Big 12 or an SEC, and then you played the national title game because you just played one postseason game.
Right.
You would never say, no, I want to play in the first round rather than have a first round bye, would you?
No.
Never.
No.
Never.
Never.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
And I think the way it fell, you got to remember, this is the first of all first.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to judge it with.
Yeah.
The layoff guys were 0-4. The conference championships, correct me if I'm wrong, were 0-5. So all that, a pattern hadn't been set yet, and I think we all want to throw our 2 cents in. This is wrong. That's wrong. The only thing wrong right now with college football is they got a problem with a portal, and they have a calendar problem. These kids and these coaches, the accountability of being at a place, I'm concerned more about that stuff than I am the playoffs, because there's some issues going on, and it's going to be interesting to see who takes charge to get these things squared away.
The AFCA is going to have their meetings this weekend. That's when I first saw you after you had been hired by Art. So that's coming up. But I don't know if anyone has enough clout to get anything done. Craig, did you have another one for Coach?
Yes, Coach. We saw Baylor fall to LSU last week. And I'm really asking this question, not so much about that game, although feel free to riff on that if you want. But they made a couple of coaching moves today. They're moving on from cornerbacks coach Kevin Curtis, who's basically been here with Aranda since day one, and also outside linebackers coach Caleb Collins. I'm just asking you in general, was there anything on that particular side of the ball that are you at all surprised by those moves? And did you see anything specifically maybe on that back end, the outside linebackers or the cornerbacks, that stood out to you, and you see where Aranda's coming from here with these moves?
Craig, I've known Kevin Curtis since he played at Texas Tech. I've watched him coach. He's an excellent coach. He's a product of a season that sort of went up and down. I don't know the other guy. I've always said this. Coaches have to make tough decisions. Kevin's a big boy. He'll get a job. He is a good coach. I don't think he has to leave here being shameful of anything. I don't know the linebacker coach. I just knew he was young and sort of new at it.
Yeah.
I don't fault Dave for making changes. The thing that you always have to remember is secondary play is the hardest thing to play on the field. I mean, you're backpedaling, and you've got the fastest players on the field in your face, and you've got to find a way to defend them. Now, the best way to defend them is to get after that quarterback. And what did you not see Baylor do in the bowl game?
They could not get to the quarterback.
They did not touch the quarterback against an offensive line that had never played. Maybe that layoff they had all year, they were really fresh. What do you think about that, Smoke?
Yeah, the LSU look good, and that's a lot of them, as you said, they're backups. But that's also how deep they are, and you wonder if they're playing the right guys sometimes. They missed the receiver, obviously, but they had plenty of them, man. They did. They're not lacked for that.
I didn't think Baylor pressured. I think that they left there were some matchup issues, but I will say this about the game. Baylor should have won that game. I mean, when you have a quarterback, the thing that was disappointing, we weren't able to get our running game on track. 2.9 yards a carry. Mm-hmm. They're not a great rushing team at all, and they averaged over 4. Obviously, the kickoff return, and then the pick six. They couldn't ever get the thing right. Now, it looked like to me, everybody sent me the pictures of the Hawkins kid. I mean, obviously that was a touchdown. I don't know how they came back and said, it wasn't. I thought at that time in the game that was huge, but I just think defensively they let him get away from him and not running the ball. I really felt they were a better team that day, but like you said, offensively LSU did some things that won the game for them.
I think if they don't snap the ball over Sawyer's head, they win that game.
It was crazy. I agree with you. That was a backbreaker. What happened? Were they on silent count? Is that what they said?
We didn't get a chance. I don't think there was ever a post game when I remember Sawyer Robertson was in it. It's not like when they had the breakout sessions.
Right.
I don't think was he really?
He was in 2 or 3 of them.
Well, he wasn't in this one. So we didn't get a chance to talk to him about that. And Aranda was not going to probably have any information on that other than what we – last thing, Mac Brown joined us on Friday. And as you know now in retirement, and you guys are the ones that sent him there. Well, sent him out of Texas because you beat him in 11, 10, 11, and I guess 12, 13. Your thoughts about guys like you, Mac Brown, Nick Saban, why can't they allow some of you to get into a room and try to help straighten all this crap out, or would they even listen to you?
Well, the first question I ask you, who is they? Are you talking about the NCAA?
Yeah, that's a great question. Or would it be Greg Sankey, the Big Ten?
Well, I think, right now in college football, you have people that are not informed. The coaches have no representation. Back when I first started coaching, we had a group called CFA, and Chuck Ninus was the president. And Chuck Ninus was the most powerful person in college football. I'm thinking seriously, and I say this with all things, and I've talked to a lot of people, from agents to ADs. This thing's either going to get changed fast, or the NCAA is not going to have a Power Four conference. They're going to be a breakoff. I believe that, because they know, the coaches know it's out of control. It's got to be the way they do it. The paying has got to be balanced and mandated, and they've got to get a calendar that these players and these coaches have a life. These coaches are working 12 months a year. There's going to be, I'm telling you, the ones that are going to benefit this are these lawyers, because these wives are going to divorce these coaches. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
people are leaving. They don't, and you know what? We can't keep letting the players run the program. One of the things I've always said as a coach, we've got to save the players from themselves, and it's happening right now. We've got to make it right, get it arranged right. Hey, I'm not against the compensation, but make it even, where you don't have the marquee programs taking everything. Make it even, make it balanced, and get the calendar right, where their calendars is fair and good. Education can still be got, and then the coaches can have some balance in their lives.
One of the arguments against that from those who follow the game, whether it's fans or others, or even those who represent the players, is, yeah, but the coaches can do whatever they want. Why can't we now? Because that's basically what's happening, right?
But do you that's what we just lo and behold, the country just said, hey, we got to have a switch from that wokeness. I mean, you can't let people that are unqualified to make decisions do the things we're doing right now, because it starts pandemonium. And we have to set that, there's a reason that we have rules and regulations, and it's not to please everybody. I mean, you and God knows you and I grew up in a time where, you know what, you did what you were told, and it's time to somewhat get back to that.
Yeah, I don't know if the hay's out of the barn, if they'll ever be able to get it back in the barn.
Oh yeah, they can get it back.
Okay.
They can get. Hey, let me tell you something. It's amazing what you can do when you just mandate it. If they love football the way they say they do, and the passion, yes, we can. We can get it back. Now, what I'm saying is, though, too, and still make sure they have the opportunity of earning what they are right now.
Yeah, I think the problem, then they'll get sued, though.
By force, you got 5 players that are going to play at 4 universities. Now, how stupid is that?
Hey, I'll give you one here, Phil. TJ Finley, who's going to Tulane.
Yeah.
5th school. He went to LSU. He went to Auburn. He went to Texas State. He went to Western Kentucky, and now he's at Tulane.
And where has he ever been a factor? Anywhere.
The best season he had was at Texas State last year before Western Kentucky.
Yeah, he's the one that riddled Baylor as the quarterback.
And then they got rid of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. They got it. They moved on to somebody else. Hey, man, appreciate it. Are you out? You got any warmers out there where you are on that
You
back
know,
porch?
look, I'm sitting in front of my fireplace outside.
Oh, golly, you're the best, man. Thank you, Phil.
All
Appreciate
right,
it,
guys.
Coach.
All right.
Phil Bennett, long time, 47 years in college football with us on 365 Sports.